webinar, Innovations for Effective Consumer Engagement and Regulatory Compliance. This webinar is presented by the Center for Auto Finance Excellence, which is a resource for best practices and actionable advice for auto finance professionals. This is first in our four-part 2016 series of webinars and is presented by the Center through the generous support of Fiserv and DataScan. I would like to take a moment to thank Fiserv and DataScan for their generosity. We greatly appreciate it. This teleconference harkens to just some of what we do at the Center for Auto Finance Excellence. The Center 2013 by Auto Finance News to benefit the auto finance community. The Center, which has nearly 1,000 members today, shares its content through events like this and at autofinanceexcellence.org, which we urge you to join. Our goal is to share unique content and insights on the practice of auto finance. Fresh articles are added to the site all the time. Some recent delve into collecting from millennials, how lenders foster consumer engagement through Twitter, and tips for improving mobile apps. The info covered today will also provide a taste of what you'll experience at the upcoming Auto Finance Risk and Compliance Summit, which will take place on May 9th and 10th in Fort Worth, Texas, as well as our new event, Auto Finance Innovation, which will take place on May 11th, also in Fort Worth. You can visit AFRCS.com and autofinanceinnovation.com for more information and to register. To share the link to this webinar with your colleagues. We're going to take a look at best practices for effective consumer engagement in today's digital world, how to respond to the shift in consumer behavior, and what are the legal and compliance issues associated with these changes. Let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Joel Kennedy. He is the Chief Compliance Officer and Chief Performance Officer of Pelican Auto Finance, an auto finance lender that specializes in the deep subprime space. I'm so very pleased that Joel is here to share his insights with us, and I would now like to turn this over to him. Joel, take it away.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Auto Finance News, Larissa, Deanna, and Katie for putting this together. There we go. About today is what I call customer engagement 2.0, which is using new and old ways to engage with your customers. Well, we're going to go through some of the consumer trends that are driving the market, further into what I mean by customer engagement and why it's important for us all to look at the ways that we engage with our customers. A bit about how this can all come together within your technology stack, and briefly on some of the legal and compliance issues that need to be handled. This graphic slide that I picked up from the Pew Research Center gives categories of U.S. consumers. They break it down into the baby boomers, and millennials. These are the graphic groups that I think we're all familiar with. Different trends within each of them and different behaviors. But the thing I want to point out here is, this is from 2015. You see that the millennials passing the boomers, they surpassed them in 2013. Then you have them surpassing the Gen X in terms of being the largest portion of the U.S. labor force. So with this, I just want to state that the millennials are certainly the at this point, and I think it would be much higher. So they're the movers. The Pew data from the Pew Research Center, and additionally, I'll start off with some information from the 2015 Fed report on consumers and mobile financial services, where they did that mobile banking among smartphone users with a bank account is at 52%. And we're going on some of the technology pieces here. Now, when we traditionally think of outreach to customers, the old plain old telephone service has been there for years. We came to computers, that really became heavy penetration, mid to late 80s, I really say. And, then you get to today where we're really talking about mobile and smartphone oriented. So you can talk about e-statements utilizing text messages. The availability of those stats is really weak. But couple trends buried here that I want to really draw out for people. Number one, both millennials and baby boomers are very comfortable using text messaging and mobile devices. In fact, I see in my operations that boomers are comfortable with text that may not ever become comfortable with using email. More personal note, I think of my mother or some other folks that I know, their parents who are in their 70s or 80s. A lot of them just skipped over email entirely and very comfortable using text messaging with a mobile smartphone device, which pretty much everybody has. Secondly, the value of a computer in society is diminished, as I stated, and this that you can see here on computers and broadband-enabled homes can be misleading. A lot of people going off the grid, so, that metric that looks at computers or broadband penetration in the house with the smartphones may not be as important. So just bring it back to the whole point of smartphones. I believe they are the future. I mean, obviously I'm stating this here, but I can call you, I can text you, I can email you, web page, you can pull up my mobile app, all on device. So there's really very little reason for the consumer to engage with you with any mechanism. Responses to the changing consumer demographics and behavior have manifested themselves in a number of ways. As I said, I think we owe a lot to the mobile telephone industry for getting telephone integration really done and embedded into everything, and it's all on spot. With that, from basic innovations to the more disruptive offerings, the proposition can change. The good news is they're sticky and create for the customers to engage. At the level of basic innovation on this, it's by no means simple. It has a great deal of integration across your multiple platforms to make sure that the data is accurate. They can look at their account, customers can look at their account history, make changes to their preferences, request e-statements, these types of things. There's multiple platform layers. You're going to need reporting. There's a lot of data moving and frequent updates. So while basic innovation, it's by no means meant to be simple. That we have for self-service. So in retail, I'll just pick on retail for the examples because I think that everybody can connect with them. I think is going to move to only one teller in any of their locations, and everything else will be kiosk driven. I've seen some visuals of what the McDonald's of the future will look like. It'll be kiosk driven. At your grocery stores, at least I live, a customer self-service aisle is a normal deal. I like all this. I think it's going to change things, and we need to look at that and how we can drive more customer self-service within servicing subprime automotive customers. Customer rewards are a great way to keep consumers on top of their account, create that stickiness, create that incentive, that interest for them to come back. And if you incorporate gamification in, then you can possibly increase the stakes. So gamification means to me is, as opposed to just giving the consumer rewards for having made the payments, and also add a game component in there where they spin a wheel or do something else, and then they can essentially multiply those points up. In other applications of gamification, actually in subprime automotive, but this is more with the dealers, the managers coming into your app portal or something, that we've been using gamification for years, and all it needs to be is a little silly game, and people get addicted to it, and yeah, it gets people back. So I believe it works. It's very, very new, and there's not a whole lot known about it, just the concept. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about fintech. I think the fintech industry is really the killer app of the group, much like the mobile phone is the game changer that we talked about on the prior slide. The fintech, on its definition, they really capture the user by making it simple. And end user voice into the design, to me, is the nirvana as a process engineer. And fintech market's going to continue to grow exponentially because of it. I put a stat there from Ernst & Young. They just did a study on fintech. So fintech users are setting up their account just because it's easy. And that, if you on the and incorporate that throughout the life cycle of the customer, this is nirvana. So what do you mean for subprime auto, those accounts? How do we propose to embrace these ways and technologies? How much of it is jamming it down the dealer's throats? I do much. Mobile web allows the users to have the same rich experience on a mobile device as a computer. You got links and text payment reminders. And I think those can only increase your contact and engagement. And we talk about customer rewards and gamification. I think these are the types of things that drive more loyalty. You can into things like updating apps, taking a picture of your collateral, sending in updated copies of your insurance. These things are very relevant to our servicing our customer base. And when you put it together, you really have the barriers to payment, making it an easy. Remember, you want to ensure that the customer prioritizes their car payment, just like consumers now prioritize their mobile payment over everything else. What we're trying to do, we've got ourselves to the place where they will prioritize that payment highest up in the payment stream, and this is what it's all about. Some of the different engagement methods. I spent a lot of time on the more new ones, but they're still very relevant, and they're possibly safer because I think the compliance roadmap is more clear. There are places where the regulations have not come up to even for the old school methods. They're certainly farther along than the new school methods. I think there's a world of promise with regard to efficiencies. So imagine that you're only ever talking to customers that have a problem. They have to talk to somebody because it's complicated. They tell you why they can't make their payment, to tell you why their car isn't running. These are I want to talk to. I want to have all of my agents focused on them. I don't talking to customers who are just calling to make a payment. Do that themselves through ways. That really needs to be our goal. World from a technology stack and overlay. But the processors, the top line there, and they're delivering across my multiple platforms. Definitely an important component. Feeding the website and assisting with some of the communications in the mobile. Website that I have going along the column there, that really needs to pull it all together. The customer loyalty points and rewards having to go across all of the different platforms and being it all together and make sure that, if a customer made a payment on their mobile app, they get points. If they make a payment in another way, they get points. You've got to accumulate it all together. And I think the customer loyalty points is something that has been lacking in subprime. I think that it is very relevant in Prime Plus, and it's something that this is a lot of this stuff. Even this technology stack is what we're building towards. Many of the deep subprime companies may say that they're there. The challenge it's not always exposed to everybody, so not everybody can see it. But in the industry, I'll just make this statement. We're think everybody's there, but this is what I believe everybody's kind of working towards. So we're not allowed any fun without bringing along the lawyers and the compliance folks. So we have to talk a little bit about that. I think it's important that you vet your business ideas along the lines of any of these consumer contact initiatives. Do that prior to solidifying your strategy. Maybe a lawyer or compliance person, there's a lot of frustration when they're brought in only when an issue arises or when you're way far down the path of design. Working probably has dinosaur remnants that need to be migrated over, and you know, in that exercise. Compliance piece that at least I'm worried about, or I try to keep front and center, has to do with the TCPA compliance and having a good mechanism to getting consent. Technology can enable a lot of ways where you can get that consent a lot more efficiently and through those multiple mechanisms. But you just want to make sure that you have it really nailed down. There's issues with fees. Interestingly enough, I think that millennials in particular and Gen X are willing to pay for convenience. So any additional channels or systems or integrating customer information, you're going to want to make sure you've got your handle on information security and privacy. And finally, I know before, but you know, I just want to echo this. While they have regulatory oversight over the larger participants, their reach of enforcement is hanging under the sun when you consider the application of unfair and deceptive acts and practices, or UDAP. And for purposes of enforcement, you don't have to be a larger participant. From them. So, Maple, the best practice model, are the place you want to make sure that the access. I think it's more important than computer or any of the other mechanisms. Don't forget compliance and legal folks. Talk to them first. You're going to spend time and effort down the road and problems. Take advantage of the mobile-rich environment. That really, when we talk about millennials, you know, we hear it a lot. They really don't want to talk to anybody. This to me is the game changer for moving it forward for all of us. So with that, back over to our and see if we have any questions.
Joel, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I'd love to follow up your presentation with a few questions, and I'll start with one that was sent in from one of our readers. Text as a channel. What are some requirements for the SMS platform you use? What capabilities beyond being able to send a text are important?
Yeah. With the messaging, I start with the compliance, a high level of control over messaging and being able to track and monitor that. I do like to be able to track and measure, report on the effectiveness of the different treatments. The text can only get you so far. If somebody has an issue where they've into their cash flow, maybe hospitalized, maybe they're get a little bit more creative to work with that customer to help them through that bumpiness, you're not going to be able to solve all that over a text message. That's when you really need to get somebody on the phone. So I do like text as a channel. I think the platform offers a great deal. But I think some pitfalls in there that you just want to make sure that you're really buttoned up on.
So we've seen some lenders adopt biometric identification systems for their apps, primarily fingerprint and voice recognition. Are you going to be adopting any similar systems? And if so, how do you address customer security concerns?
Yeah, I love the fingerprint functionality. I think about the one on my iPhone. Banking apps use this a lot, and you can use the Apple Pay function. I actually think that it enhances security, so I like it, and I think it has a position that it offers to on the servicing side. But I kind of tie it to when consumers are using your app. If you have enough, you have to actually build an app. We're kind of going a different way right now, and we're going to feel our way, see if there's need for an app. I can just bundle the host of services through really the mobile website and enable customers to kind of log in and 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 do all the things that they need to do without having an app, and it's just easier and less costly for me to maintain it that way. So I like the biometric. I think it does enhance security. We're looking at it, but we've got to build out step 1 and step 2 before I think we get there.
Engagement and communication methods like texting and mobile apps. We're wondering, how do you balance targeting the new generation of borrowers while also keeping in touch with an older generation that may be more used to traditional communication channels?
Yeah, I mean, evaluations and it just seems that the old traditional methods are still relevant, and the piece everybody's trying to add in is segmentation. We haven't really, and it needs to be more than just the millennials versus Gen X versus boomers. If you can really get an idea through behavior pattern recognition or behavioral scoring models, I think what that'll allow you to do is drive various treatments to the various channels and find the most effective means. You can match up with the individual preferences, and you'll come out with a very powerful way to have an engagement model. So I think they're all good arrows to have in the quiver. And that when you're dealing with deep subprime automotive, you do need the telephone. I mean, their customers are going to run into hiccups and problems, and you need to be able to be there with solutions.
Still on millennials and Gen X, we've seen a lot of lenders try and adopt best practices to work with the younger generations and how they like to communicate and how they like to, pay their bill. So when it comes to collections, what are some of the practices you found have worked best with the younger generation specifically?
Younger generation, everybody does say that they want to do everything on a phone and not really talk to you. I've seen that the adoption of them, where we have a customer that we haven't really spoken to as much as others, and they do everything. They do really take to the customer self-service model. So that's one thing that I've seen. The other touched on earlier is that we're definitely in that the baby boomers are, you can do an email campaign and you can do text messaging, and they're far more comfortable to utilize the text messaging as them, and maybe they're not as responsive. So, and then the Gen X, I just really think they're kind of in the middle. They'll respond to a multitude of these channel attacks, but like I said, we're just on the cutting edge. I mean, a lot of this is basic at this point. We don't, because it's probably a challenge across the industry. We don't have a lot of the demographic information just inherent within our system about the age, or the age and the certainly gender or any other kind of segmentation that people do normally use. So that's something that before we start heading down that path, we want to make sure, again, from a compliance and legal standpoint, you're doing everything right. But the behavior scoring models, to me, I think are often even more powerful because they're independent of all factors, and so you can just really bucket people. We did some back in mortgage marketing with a big bank that I was with prior. Broke people into different profiles, and we gave them names. There was like Steve and Bob and Ed or something. I forget what it was. They weren't really, the names themselves weren't meaningful, but the you built underneath them were treatments based on the individual segments. That to me is off in the future, but it is a place where I think we're heading.
You touched on during your presentation on the need for self-serve options, but we've seen some lenders adopt technology and automation in their collection practices as a way to eliminate the potential for appearance of discrimination. But I'm wondering what part of the process still requires a human touch. Like
I said, definitely anytime the customer has an issue, if they're going to make a pay. Some people have said that they've kind of solved how to capture promises to pay and via a mobile app or text-based. That's interesting to me. We haven't deployed that yet. We like to take those, over the phone, and like I said, cash flow issue or anything like that. Really, to me, it's about it's the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the whole issue.
Switching gears, I wanted to ask you if you're seeing the same thing as we are, which is an increased use of alternative data as a way to target thin file consumers. Do you see a risk, or down the road, do you foresee the risk that subprime lenders are going too deep down the credit spectrum?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we really make sure that whoever we were using that was bringing in some additional data be viewed as an actual agency, and it's out there. And then there's these other guys that do stuff by looking at people's Facebook pages and bringing in all this other alt data. That's the stuff that I can't really find a solid foundation for using and doing it safely. So, whenever we find an alternative source, we make sure that it is. They put a little publication and it says these are all the ones that we recognize as credit reporting agencies. So if they're not listed on there, you're do it. I'm helpful because we have some thin file and some ghost file where you're pulling in additional information, and you got to remember these are unbanked, so you don't have that a lot of the history that you would have otherwise, and you're able to supplement that with some additional information and get as a no. I think that's overall helpful, and what we're seeing is also that just the data is helpful on our ability to make good decisions on our side as well. So it's supplementing our ability to manage risk.
Is about gamification. You talked a little bit about it, reward your borrowers, and it's a term that we've increasingly heard within auto finance, but I wanted to ask you if you foresee a danger or a downside in rewarding borrowers for doing something that they should be doing anyways, like making payments on time.
Sure. No, I think there is. I mean, the reason being, I think, Prime Plus is accustomed to getting these rewards and using them, and we're not running that argument. So I think that there's a theory behind rewards and gamifications that's going to increase the quality of your payment streams, and that to me is a win-win.
Thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your insights on this topic for us, and sharing your best practices with us. I also want to thank everyone who joined us on the webinar for their time today, and to remind you to visit autofinanceexcellence.org, the center's website. Keep an eye out on autofinanceexcellence.org for word on future webinars. Thank you again for your participation. We look forward to sharing auto finance insights with you again soon.